Hello and welcome to the Branching Out podcast. I'm Celine Whitetail.
And I'm Gull the cactus. We don't actually know what we're doing, and I can't see the script, so hello. This is a small explanation of the podcast.
Oh my god.
The idea behind branching out is we will research a topic that is new to one or both of us every week and do a deep dive on whatever it is that interests us about the topic and just kind of have unhinged research excitement hours for not an hour, but some time.
Little introduction to us if you haven't met us before. My name is Celine Whitetail. I am a VTube content creator. I am a druid slash dryad slash nature seasonal kind of whatever it is that you want to attribute to me. Deer girl, also a good one. I stream primarily on Twitch, but I also have stepped into different corners of the internet, such as doing roleplay ASMR, as well as been doing some cut downs of my streams on YouTube. And now we're trying to do our own podcast.
And I'm Gull the Cactus, like I said before. You can find me on Twitch sometimes, on Twitter, yapping, and I am branching out, into ASMR script writing recently. So that has been very fun, as well as I do some digital art.
So this is where we're going to go over the general explanation as to what the format of the podcasts are going to be. Basically, I am the type of person that knows a lot about the overall idea of a topic, specifically kind of the topic that we're going over today, which is Greek mythology. I know bits and pieces of Greek mythology, having taken them from a bunch of different sources, and it is something that I'm interested in, but it's never been something where I have sat down and, what was I trying to say, read a book? I've never bothered to read a book, and I probably never will, even for this. I will actively go out of my way to not read books. I will consume media in any other way that it can be given to me as long as I do not have to read. Wonderful world of YouTube has been very helpful on this subject in particular. We kind of start off with a broad topic. Like I said, this week we're going to be doing Greek mythology. We wanted to have the two of us go and find a niche topic within that broad topic that we found interesting and explain what interesting things we found about it and what we learned, to see how two different people learn and latch on to subject matter that interests them within the same genre and topic.
Plus, it's something that, we can talk about with our community, really Celine's community that I just kind of crib off of. And just learn more about, and especially because with this topic, Greek mythology, you've played Hades, I've played Hades. It's been like a big thing for both of us.
Don't spoil. I'm talking about Hades heavily during my topic.
There are a lot of connections. I feel like most of the topics we've picked so far, and I say I have written up an unhinged list, and Celine is going through and selecting the one for the next week that we are going to actually do. But I feel like there is something that we already have an established connection to said topics in some way, shape, or form. So it'll be fun to learn more about something that we have either very lightly delved into before, or in some cases, I've taken classes on mythology, I've taken classes on philosophy, all kinds of stuff, and just bring that together. Hyper fixated and excitedly info dumping together.
And one thing you will learn about the differences in us very quickly is that Gull is educated. She has a master's degree, and I graduated high school, public high school, unlike the private high school that Gull graduated from. So
okay, but that doesn't matter.
Well, I'm kind of head empty, and she wanted to reread the Iliad for this. So that is the theme I'm sure we'll run across many times while going over these subjects. As I said originally, the original topic or the overarching topic for this week is going to be Greek mythology. So, Miss, I've read the Iliad and the Odyssey. Can you give us a brief history of Greek mythology? Go.
Yeah, I actually wrote this down in my section on my notes. Okay, so just like a quick note, like and I meant to say this earlier, we are not going to be exhaustive scholars on any of these topics. There's certainly things that we are going to get wrong or misrepresent or misunderstand, and I just want to say at the top that that is like okay because we're learning, and the theme of this podcast is just to learn and find things that like get you excited about topics you never thought you would be interested in before, and just take joy in the process of teaching yourself something new. And so we want to share that with the audience as well. But basically what I did was go to Wikipedia and do Greek mythology just so I got like the big like broad thing so that I could hone in on the specific things that were interesting to me, look for primary and secondary sources. In this case, it's going to be like all translations because you're talking about stuff that was written in Greek and I don't know Greek. So there we have it. Greek or Latin, but I don't know Latin either. So yeah, so Greek myth as we know it today kind of started from traditions in the 18th century BC. With Minoan and Mycenaean oral singing traditions, which is really cool when you think about how history gets translated into written history from oral history, and how these things were kept alive for so long by songs that people would sing around a campfire or sing in a hall as like a demonstration for nobility, or just there's a long tradition of song and performance being used to educate, and that is something you would see in the Middle Ages too, and also like nursery rhymes even in the modern day. So it's really cool to have that like connection throughout human history, of just being able to share information through our love for like little tunes that rhyme and stuff like that. But these oral traditions became canonized more or less, and that's like a weird word to use for that considering its biblical connotations, but that's a topic for another day. When they were included in Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which I'm an Iliad bitch. Like, I love that shit. Like, the Odyssey's great, don't get me wrong. But like the Iliad, I love it. Okay, anyway, there were also some very big poems such as the Theogony and Works and Days, which were both written by Hesiod, who was a near contemporary of Homer. And these sorts of general, broad, overarching works got passed down into the Hellenistic traditions of tragedies and comedies around the 5th century. And then further into texts like Plutarch and Pausanias in the time of the early Roman Empire. And so you have like so many hundreds of years worth of tradition coming together and being funneled forward and taking inspiration from various topics that would have been relevant to the modern day and getting reinterpreted. And especially when you consider them as we know it, for us, like we would be using English translations. That's gonna like translating something is always going to change the meaning of it at least a little bit. So you're talking about basically echoes of echoes of echoes throughout human history. But yeah, anyway, that was like how Greek myth like works, but like the what of it is more like these really human ideas of these gods and goddesses who have so much power but also so many flaws, and we see that constantly. And I'm sure that that's something that Celine is going to talk about in her topic, and it's definitely something that comes out a lot in the Iliad and the Odyssey. So it's just these really grand poetic works about how these gods have their own jealousies and their own interests, and they are petty. They're so petty so often, and they just play with humans, but they also need humans because humans worship them, and that is something that is very important to the gods. So
That is, I will be taking a lot of my, giving a lot of credit to a YouTube channel known as Overly Sarcastic Productions, who does, I didn't look into anything else that they did, but they did like little voiceovers and like really in-depth. Like, this person has studied like Mycanian Greek things and like really goes back into the history of the original source topics and things like that. And they expressed that the reason why Greek gods in modern retellings, like such as like Disney, the movie in Hercules, and such kind of wash down how bad Greek gods were, is because in like the Christian wash that we have now, gods are supposed to be the good guys. They're supposed to be like, you know, better than human. And was not the case with Greeks, because the Greeks didn't see gods as better. They saw them. I wish I could remember what it was that she said, but she made a really great point of how they saw gods as their stories were the truth, not the ideal of human, which is why, you know, women were treated poorly and, you know, gods cheated all the time because they were a representation of human, not the angelic perfection that a lot of people see gods as today.
Mm-hmm. And when you're talking, it's interesting because the Greek tradition so heavily influenced the Roman tradition. And then with the Roman tradition, you have the advent of Christianity. So there's like that cultural melting pot that occurs there. And those like translations of those ideals onto things that would never have had those, thoughts and ideals apply to them. So that's a good point that they make. It's also interesting. I will say, like, I, of course, because I'm a feminist girl boss, love to make sure that like the female perspective is represented in all things, even if it is something that is overwhelmingly written and like categorized and researched by men across the ages, even though like in modern times that might not be the case. There are definitely like some moments where you can have a more like female oriented view of stories, and surprisingly there are parts of the Iliad and the Odyssey where like women do get their due, even the female gods, and like it's surprisingly more fair than you would think in some ways, based on the time period. But yeah, we'll get into that later. Basically, I'm going to be unhinged about the Iliad, mostly a little bit about the Odyssey. Mostly I wish that we had more time before today, because I would have literally reread the Iliad and the Odyssey. I couldn't even find my copies in the apartment. There's too many books. I couldn't find them. And I didn't want to read, like, there are wiki source copies online, and that is what I was drawing from today when I was looking at things. I was looking at the Theodore Alois Buckley translations because he translated both of them. And I don't know why I picked that one as opposed to other ones, but I did. So I wish I could have reread the Iliad at least, but I didn't because we didn't have time. But yeah, there are two sections of a class in my undergrad called Foundations of Western Lit, and the fall section is on the Bible and the spring section is on Greek mythology. And the year I was taking them, the professor who was doing the Greek mythology section was on sabbatical in the spring, so I never got to take it, and I'm sad about that. But I did take the Bible section. It was great. It was very interesting. The point of that class is that Greek mythology and the Bible are two of like the most significant things that like all of Western literature references, even if it's just like an idiom or just a theme of a story. And it's so significant that it's basically unavoidable even if you don't realize that you're probably being influenced by Greek mythology as you are writing in some way, shape, or form. And so like I just have a couple things that I was looking through that like were modern things that were, or more modern things at least, that were influenced by Greek mythology, such as, I know there's a hugely popular webcomic that I haven't read called Lore Olympus. That's a retelling of Persephone and Hades. You have Hades and Hades 2, the video games. You have things like T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, like a very seminal English poem. The Divine Comedy by Dante. You have so many Shakespeare plays, modern works like Hadestown, all kinds of things.
Stop encroaching on my brand. This is everything I was going to talk about.
Yeah, but that is all I'm saying about them. I'm not even digging into any of them. I'm just saying there's so many things that like reference Greek mythology. But I'm gonna go back to the source because I love the source because I'm an Iliad bitch. Okay, so I first read the Iliad and the Odyssey when I was in like 7th or 8th grade. And I didn't read it as part of school. I just read it for fun, which is kind of what like you can know about me as a person from that sentence. Hector of Troy, Helen, and Cassandra are all dope. There are other people who are dope, but most of them all fucking suck besides those three. I love them. I am a Hector stan until the day I die. And I was so like sad when he died. Spoilers. So basically the idea is you have these two kings, the kings of the Greeks, who Agamemnon is the one who is like the elder son of Atreus, and he is the one who is in charge of basically everything, and his younger brother Menelaus is the one who was married to Helen. This will come up throughout, but essentially all the banners were called for helping to defend Menelaus's honor because his wife Helen was taken by Priam, the king of Troy, his son Paris, because of some fuckery with the gods. It always comes down to fuckery with the gods. It always comes down to humans being idiots and gods being jealous and petty. And that is like kind of the overarching theme of the things that I'm talking about with regard to the Iliad. So it's been 10 years. Well, 10 wars. It's been 10 wars, kind of. It's been 10 years at the beginning of the Iliad. And it's funny because the quote that I'm about to say, even though this is all about Menelaus and Paris and Agamemnon and all their shenanigans, the beginning of the Iliad kind of says it's Achilles, which is like, are we sure? I mean, he's not contributing in a positive manner, but he has legitimate reasons to be a little bit pissy about some things. So, it's just a little funny to me. But anyway, Menelaus' wife was taken by Paris after he had won her in a spat between the gods. This whole situation was, there is a golden apple. I don't even remember who had the golden apple, but it was presented as for the fairest of the goddesses, and Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera were like, that's me, and he was stupid enough to choose among them, because why are you going to do that? You're going to piss off the other two forever? Spoiler, he did. But Aphrodite was like, hey, if you pick me, because I am the most beautiful, obviously, I will give you the most beautiful woman in the world.
That isn't her, obviously.
The most beautiful human. Yeah. Aphrodite, babe, the most beautiful woman in the world was already married. You can't just do this. Like, what are you doing? But because she wanted the apple and to be proven as the most beautiful, and because Paris is a dumb idiot, he was like, hell yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Chose Aphrodite, got Athena and Hera pissed at him forever.
What did Athena and Hera promise?
I didn't look into that. I forgot. I think they did offer things. I could Google real quick.
I demand to know. I need to know if he made a bad choice.
I mean, he made a bad choice because it resulted in war forever. And
yeah, but that's not
died,
important. Like,
okay, Ares is the one who fucking started all this because the parents of Achilles had a marriage ceremony held by Zeus. And she wasn't invited. So she made a party favor, which was the golden apple. and was like, here, this is for the most beautiful, for the fairest one. And so she was the original shit stirrer, but she kind of avoided most of the war. Athena offered to make him the greatest warrior and most knowledgeable of all men. Hera offered Paris wealth and power. Aphrodite said the hand of the most beautiful mortal woman. And because he was a simp and
Men.
couldn't get any girls, yeah, because he is a man, no offense, men. He was like, I want the most beautiful wife ever. Never mind the fact that she's married. She was married. Okay.
Greek mythological men.
Yeah, it's funny because this is also going to come back to being Odysseus's fault a little bit, and I will get around to that later, but it's also Odysseus's fault. So we love that. We love a full circle moment. Because of that, Hera hates Paris and is like, I want to destroy Troy. And
Logical reaction.
Zeus is like, don't, maybe? And Athena's like, well, I have my own favorites in this battle, and one of them is Odysseus. So I'm going to, counsel him in various ways and allow him to use his guile and knowledge to resolve incidents without, getting directly involved in the same way that like Hera and Zeus were. This is the opening stanza. Sing, O goddess, the destructive wrath of Achilles, son of Peleus, which brought countless woes upon the Greeks, and hurled many valiant souls of heroes down to Hades, and made themselves a prey to dogs and to all birds. But the will of Jove was being accomplished. From the time when Atreides, king of men, and noble Achilles, first contending, were disunited. It's like I said, it's funny to me that they're like, oh, this is Achilles' fault, when really it's like, it's Paris' fault, it's Eris's fault, it's a little bit Odysseus' fault, it's Aphrodite's fault, certainly, but like, they're like, Achilles, the fact that you are being a little petulant because you were gifted a woman who is the son, or not the son, who is the daughter of a Trojan noble as like a prize in battle, and you were not happy with that for various reasons. And then also Agamemnon was like, well, if he's not gonna sleep with her, then I will. So he took her, and even though Achilles wasn't gonna sleep with her, he's like, hey, that was my battle prize. You can't just do that. That makes me look like I'm not honorable or whatever. You can't just take that. And even though that is a literal woman, that I'm referring to. So anyway, he was being all mad in his tent because he was, slighted by Agamemnon. Agamemnon's a fucking asshole. I hate him. He is second only to Menelaus, who is a useless asshole, his brother, and they all kind of suck. That's the Greeks. Then you have Odysseus as well. He's important, but like, we're not getting into him. He has a whole book to himself, and maybe this is a controversial opinion, but I think Odysseus is a little overrated, even though I am like a certified Minerva stan. Like, hell yeah, Athena. Like, when I was in 7th grade, I was like, Odysseus is so cool because Athena loves him. And I'm like, yes, to a certain degree, but also like, if she wasn't giving him advice and like counsel, where would he be? Anybody? Don't know. Probably back in Ithaca. But anyway. Where he is supposed to be with his wife and son, but that's the Odyssey. Anyway, Hector, my love, my beloved, the object of my stanhood. Like, he is so cool. He is basically the Achilles of the Trojans, and he is the coolest, best warrior they have. He is Paris's brother. He's the good one. Paris sucks. And in book 3 of the Iliad, this is another quote I'm going to pull out. Hector literally says to his brother, "Cursed Paris, most excellent in form, thou woman-raving seducer, would that thou hadst either not been born, or that thou hadst perished unmarried. This indeed I would wish, and it indeed would be much better than thou shouldst be than thou shouldst thus be a disgrace and a scandal to others." And he goes on to say that, like, you took this woman, you married her, even though she was already married, and you're not even fighting on your own behalf. You're making other people die for you because you're a wimp, because you're a coward, and because you suck at battle. And he calls him a disgrace repeatedly, and he's like, you're a disgrace to our father, you're a disgrace to Troy, you suck, your haircut's stupid. And basically, it's awesome. And Paris is like, well, too bad. And Hector's just like, okay, I'm gonna go out and be the best warrior we have. And he continues to be the best warrior that they have and do awesome shit. And that comes back to be a problem when Patroclus, who is like the BFF slash beloved of Achilles, goes out in Achilles' armor to fight and is promptly slayed by Hector because he thinks it's Achilles. Not that like this happens and he like dies real quick. Like he does put up a fight, but Hector and Achilles are basically matched. They are blessed by the gods and favored by gods, and like Patroclus is great, but he's not that level.
Isn't this the story in Hades?
Yes. So Hector kills Patroclus, and it's really sad, and Achilles is super upset because that's either his best friend slash boyfriend, depending on your interpretation of things. And also, there's a lot of modern ideals that we can put on these sorts of things that we just don't have the information on. Like, I am bi, so obviously, like, I am interested in telling LGBT stories across time, and there have obviously been people who were gay and interested in the same sex throughout history. Is that necessarily the story of Achilles and Patroclus? I can't say for sure. Many modern retellings have made that the case, but like regardless of the exact nature of their relationship, Patroclus's death was significant enough to Achilles to make him so pissed he went out and killed dozens of Trojans, including Hector. And then once he had killed Hector, he dragged Hector's body around the battlefield by the back of his chariot, which was kind of fucking rude and uncalled for. Because, like, Hector is just trying to defend his stupid idiot brother who got him into all this trouble in the first place. But anyway, Hector's great. I love him. I'm sad he died. If this was being told from the perspective of Troy instead of the perspective of the Greeks, he would very easily be the main hero because he's the cool one.
Fuck that guy. He made Achilles sad.
Yeah, well, Hector's great. You should. I mean, I didn't include the scene where he goes and he speaks to his wife and his young child, and the child is scared of him because he's in his battle uniform, and he takes his helmet off and they have a very like tender moment, and he tells his wife he's going to come back, and his wife, whose name is Andromache, by the way, because that is significant to the movie we just watched. But and her lamentation and her sadness over his loss is like a significant portion of the Iliad, and also given its due time. And so that's one of the things that like I wanted to talk about. We have the perspective of Helen. She gets to talk in various areas, and also we have the perspective of people like Hecuba, Priam's wife. We have the perspective of Andromache when she is upset over Hector's death. And these women are given time to speak their perspective in a way that would not necessarily be expected based on the time period. And so that's what I meant earlier at the top when I was saying, like, Homer, even though this is a very male-dominated tale, Homer does offer, you know, that humanity and that word count, like space to speak to female characters of these legends as well. So going to Helen, I didn't find like I know that there are really good quotes from Helen, and I just didn't have the time to find them. But I included a little bit, including what I said we would come back to before, which was the situation with her marriage to Menelaus when she was originally being sold off for marriage, basically, by her father. There were so many suitors, and one of them was Odysseus, and he was like, he didn't even show up with gifts because he's like, I'm not gonna win, I'm not that hot, I don't have that good of a like land, I don't have enough to offer. But he made a deal with her father that he would help him if her father would help him in his suit for Penelope back in Ithaca. And so that is what happens. And Odysseus basically had all of the suitors who were there for Helen swear that they would defend the chosen husband against any who would quarrel with him at any time in the future. So that circles back to being Odysseus's fucking fault when Paris, quote unquote, steals Helen away. Suddenly it's an honor issue for everyone who made that pledge to Menelaus, in addition to an honor issue for Menelaus himself. Having said that, there are various sources that have different ideas on whether or not Helen went willingly, and some say it was absolutely like a rape and a kidnapping, but some say that this was something she chose, and there could be arguments for either when you consider the fact that her original marriage to Menelaus was not for love, it was because he had such a significant standing among the Greeks, and his brother Agamemnon was the one who made the suit for him, and Agamemnon is like the head of all of the heads of state in the you know the area. So I have a little fragment from Sappho, fragment 16. She was a famously potentially lesbian, literally lesbian because she was from the Isle of Lesbos, but potentially lesbian in that she was, same-sex attracted. Poet from I didn't get the exact time period, but ancient Greek poet. But she had this to say about Helen and love and choice. Some say a host of horsemen, others of infantry, and others of ships is the most beautiful thing on the dark earth, but I say it is what you love. Full easy it is to make this understood of one and all, for she that far surpassed all mortals in beauty, Helen her most noble husband, deserted, and went sailing to Troy, with never a thought for her daughter and dear parents. Was this something that she 100% chose? Probably not. But when you're talking about a situation where the gods are quarreling all around you and you're considered a prize by both your mortal father and the goddess of love and beauty, you kind of have to accept what you can about the circumstances that you've been handed. But yeah, another fragment from Sappho that I thought just kind of summed up the totality of the themes of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the real quick cliff notes on the Odyssey is that Odysseus has a bunch of misadventures where he is sailing for 40 years or something to try to get back home, and he keeps running into problems either because he's stupid and makes dumb choices, he doesn't honor the gods, or he pisses off the wrong person. And in the meanwhile, his son Telemachus is trying to keep suitors away from his mother Penelope, who is protecting herself by saying, "Oh, I'll take a new husband when I finish this weaving." And she unwinds her tapestry every night. She unwinds some of the progress. So it's kind of similar to the 1001 Nights, Scheherazade story, the frame story of where oh, you can kill me after I've told the full story. And so it's a very, very cool connection that you see in literature. And I'd love to dig deeper into that and see how that works in the future, but that is not the time for now. But the thing that kind of sums it up is the gods are petty, and they play out these fights amongst themselves and amongst their chosen mortals on the battlefield, all because if they fought amongst themselves, they would have something to actually lose. And so Sappho said in fragment 34, death isn't evil. That's what the gods think. Or they would die. And so that's kind of what happens. These men die in service of these gods and in service of their whims for little reason for themselves. But yeah, it's so cool. There's so much. And I could have gone hours talking about this, but I will stop now so that you can talk about your section. But is there anything that I mentioned that you want to chat about before we move on?
Well, I guess, what was your reasoning for picking this specific topic?
Homer is looked at as this repository of information, the guy who set the standard for what the gods were like, what this quasi-historical telling of Greek history was like, what these famous human figures were like, and what the interplay between gods and humans would be like. And how that would affect lives, and not just the lives of the individuals in the tales, but the lives of, the people that these individuals led and ruled over. So, it was kind of, for me, the obvious choice, because that's the OG story. And I also have the nostalgia for it. It's something that I read when I was younger, and I wanted to revisit it. And you could probably tell from how quickly I'm talking, how excited I was to dig into this. So I probably will still go back and read the Iliad once I find my copy in the apartment, even though we have already done the talking about it section for the podcast.
I knew the moment that we chose this topic that Hades and Persephone and their story would be my focus topic that I would choose, because this is a great example of how a lot of these podcast episodes will go from my end. There will be a subject I'm very fascinated with, but won't absorb any form of media or literature about it. I will ogle at artwork of it if I stumble across it on Twitter or Tumblr, and that will be as far as I take what I consider a little micro obsession. I've showed renditions of Persephone and Hades artwork to Gull, and in post I will put up a screenshot of my favorite iteration of it with credit to the artist here. Look at how cute they are. A little bit of overview for anybody who doesn't know. Hades, god of the underworld. Not a job he wanted. He and his siblings drew straws, lots, essentially, after they defeated the Titans, their parents, for power over the realms, and he drew the short straw and landed as the Sorter of Souls. He is the one tasked with judging souls of the dead and deciding which layer of the underworld they go to. There are 3 layers. Tartarus, which is where the wicked souls go to receive punishment. Asphodel is where most people will go. You go to Asphodel if you were unremarkable. And Elysium is where distinguished individuals go. That's where you went if you wanted to be considered a hero. Persephone, on the other hand, was the goddess of flowers and daughter of Demeter, Hades' sister, but we aren't going to talk about that, and Zeus, Hades' brother. We're really not going to talk about that. And Hades fell in love with her because she was pretty. That's a common theme in Greek mythology. Men getting in trouble because they like a pretty girl. Hades went to his brother, Zeus, and said, "Dude, I haven't spoken to a girl, like, ever. And your only personality trait is being a fuckboy, so what do I do?" And Zeus said, "Just kidnap her, lol." And Hades thought, "Good idea, bro." And he did that. While Persephone was picking flowers, Hades erupted from the ground on a black horse chariot because Hades was a theater kid and yoinked her down to the underworld. Not a lot is told about Persephone and Hades' time together at this point. The story focuses more on Persephone's mother, Demeter. She got sad, her daughter was gone, turned earth barren, and people got annoyed, because their crops were not growing. It was an eternal winter, these people needing food and whatever. And Zeus just kept lying to Demeter about what happened to Persephone. Just kept saying, or I don't know what happened to her, until Helios, goddess of the sun, or god of the sun, Helios, god of the sun, who sees all because he is the sun, tells Demeter the truth. And she demands that Persephone is returned or she'll kill everyone on Earth. Rational reaction. Zeus said, "Fine, give your wife back." During my research, I discovered there is a goddess of rainbows, Iris. I don't know why I'm putting that in here, but I just thought it was fun. Basically, Zeus didn't ever want to talk to his child mama, baby mama / sister, probably because they didn't want to ever have that conversation. So he would constantly ask other gods to be his messengers, and Iris was one of them. And as usual, Hades was pretty chill about it. He gave her back, asked her not to be sad because she would be a great queen, and he would be the best husband to her that he could possibly be. But of course, in true Greek fashion, he tricked her into eating a pomegranate from the underworld, which there is a convenient rule that if you eat anything from the underworld, you're bound to it forever, because he was worried she wouldn't come back. Take a moment to digest that. Hades, lord of the underworld, slayer of titans, and one of the original 6 of the Greek pantheon, was insecure that the girl he loved wouldn't want to stay with him, which really has to be the earliest telling of the moral of even celebrities think about their own self-worth and have bad days, A deal was eventually struck. Persephone would live 2/3 of the year on Earth and 1/3 in the underworld. And this is the myth that explains the seasons in Greek mythology. Spring and summer are the times Persephone is on Earth with her mother, and when she goes to hang out with her husband for a little bit, like any clingy mother-in-law Demeter turns the entire world barren and winter comes. Seasons are a big inspiration for my design as a VTuber, so I find it interesting that my favorite story in Greek mythology is the creation myth for seasons, which was completely unintentional. I didn't even really know that that was the point of their story until I did some research about it. While researching, I learned that Hades might be a completely Greek creation, as he seemingly cannot be found in any Mycenaean versions of this story, which is essentially the draft phase, the ancient Greek. And in the original, Poseidon might have been the king of the underworld originally, but Hades was created in the Greek retelling to have the god of water and whatever else Poseidon is the god of, and Hades to be separate. And Hades was created to have a separate ruler of the underworld, which is honestly just ironic that Hades was created for a job he didn't even really want. Hades and Persephone has everything I love in a fictional story centered on a relationship. I love enemies to lovers, the bad boy falling in love with the good girl, tall, black, brooding, dangerous man, and a small, sunshine-powered, sundress-wearing chick. I love contrasts. I love the story of change through love, and I also love Hades because Greek mythology is fucked, and Hades is like one of the only gods I know of that didn't take a million wives. Hades loves Persephone, and we love a faithful king in this house. They never cheat on each other, a Herculean feat in Greek mythology, and the two are just incredibly toxically obsessed with each other. Something I truly aspire to. Any tellings of outsiders trying to seduce one of them has the other doing something awful to that person, and I love it. It is a level of petty and obsession that I truly aspire to. And we still see Hades and Persephone retold in different ways even today, which is another thing I love. I love retellings, reimagining in the modern day, and remakes, which everybody else hates. I hate old movies, I hate old music, I hate old everything. So give it to me with $100 million budget, and I'll watch it. The most obvious retelling that I can think of, and what most of us will know, was the hit roguelike game Hades. I played it on my stream a few months ago, and it genuinely was one of my favorite games that I've ever played. The gameplay was good, but the story, which they did not have to go as hard as they did with, especially in a genre that doesn't really require the deepest of stories, was amazing. It tells the story of Zagreus, son of Hades and Nyx, who is told that his real mother is on the surface, and the gameplay loop is him getting stronger through general roguelike mechanics, weapon upgrades, power-ups, etc., to find his real mother and what happened to her. I won't spoil it for people who want to play it, but I recommend that you do if you haven't. And a sequel to the game, Hades 2, is very far in development and is going through its initial, alpha or pre-testing, or what is it called? Not beta, but
Early access.
Early access, thank you. Our favorite trigger words as gamers. I also learned of a movie from 2018 called The Fair, starring, and I'm very sorry if I butcher any of these names, Gino Anthony Pesci, Brina Kelly, Jason Stewart. It's a thriller romance of a taxi driver and a passenger who get locked in a time loop and have to keep redoing the same day until they get something right. And it will absolutely be this weekend's Discord movie night movie, so I didn't read anything into it other than the story is meant to be a retelling of Hades and Persephone. Persephone is a god in Smite, and not only has a mixed kit of skeleton warriors and flowers showing her husband's flair, the character has a VTuber skin. During the V Shoujo crossover with Smite, Iron Mouse was given a skin on Persephone, whom we love. We love Iron Mouse in this house.
Yeah, we do.
I'll also point out she has a skin called Necromancer, which has her in a rose-themed wedding dress with Skelly Boy groomsmen, and it's adorable. There is a role-playing musical adventure game called Stray Gods: The Role-Playing Musical, developed by Summerfall Studios and published by Humble Games, the publishing company behind the Humble Bundle, and it was released in 2023. It looks like an interactive comic book, from that, almost from what I skimmed through a gameplay guide. Very Wolf Among Us Choices Matter type of vibes. The synopsis is wild. The player plays as a college dropout named Grace, who is accused of murdering the last muse and must prove her innocence to Athena, Apollo, Persephone, and Aphrodite within 7 days. You select dialogue and it changes the lyrics and musical style of the songs in the musical. Laura Bailey is, of course, the main character. Ashley Johnson is in it as well as Erica Ishii, Felicia Day, and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, so all of the Critical Role alumni are there. There is a death metal band called Persephone. They released an album called Core, which is based on the myth of Persephone. Now, I can't stand metal. It is one of the few music genres I cannot listen to. It's too much, overstimulates me. But I might take a listen just for my favorite problematic faves. And lastly, the only thing that would make me leave my house, there is a musical called Hadestown, which isn't strictly about Hades and Persephone. It's a retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice. For those who played Hades, you know. But they are main characters, and it was Orpheus and Eurydice performing Living It Up on Top, which is the story of Hades and Persephone, is when Eurydice begins to fall in love with Orpheus, so they're welcome. It's currently running on the West End until December 22nd, 2024, and I'm sure Gull will be starting a fundraiser right now to get us tickets.
I want to say, first of all, Stray Gods is on our combined wish list because we have family sharing on in the apartment, so anything that is on one of our wish lists is basically on the others. So that is already on the wish list. And it's just like, you're right, they really didn't have to go so hard when it came to Hades the game, but there's just something so great about the fact that, like, I've heard people talk about the fact that Persephone is the daughter of the goddess of the seasons and nature. If she was handed pomegranate seeds, she probably knew what that meant when she ate them. She's not stupid, and like, she has her own nature domain. So I've heard people say that, like, you know, as much as this is Hades trying to like make sure his waifu doesn't leave, it's probably also Persephone trying to, you know, exert her own choices compared to her mother, who is obviously very overbearing if she's willing to kill all humans because her daughter got married, you know? Like, so there's that aspect of it too. That's really nice.
Yeah, there is a lot of different interpretations, which is there is with everything, because the original source material is for the most part no longer available, just due to non-preservation, writing on rocks, and, you know, just time. There's lots of different interpretations of the Hades and Persephone relationship. You know, exactly. There's you know, there's the argument that no, Persephone didn't know anything because Demeter was so, like, closeted her so much that even though she was the goddess of like vegetation, she hadn't actually seen the earth because Demeter squirreled her away to Olympus because she never wanted her to leave. And the only like time that she ever got to go was when she was hanging out at that one specific river with the nymphs before she got captured. So she didn't know what a pomegranate was. But then there's also people that are like, no, this is like her rebelling. And it's the story of how life changes for a woman when they're at home versus when they like meet their husband or fall in love. And yeah, there's tons of interpretations of Hades and Persephone, and, you know, some people will be quote unquote purists about the original and be like, you're just trying to find, like, you're trying to rationalize Hades kidnapping someone. And it's like, you know, it's art. Let people interpret it in a way that doesn't make them uncomfortable and makes them happy. None of it was real anyway. It's not gonna hurt you.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you think about the fact that that argument is based on like the idea that we are taking modern persuasions and trying to apply it to something that's old, like very old. But you think about the fact that Sappho, who was writing in like the from 600, or she was born in 630 and she lived until 570 BC, so significantly closer to then than we are now, and like, you know, was speaking in the language and traditions of the stories we're talking about. She had these interpretations of these gods and goddesses and stories that like gave more agency to women as well. So I think it's a little unfair to be like, oh, you're just being a modern feminist and trying to make this like modern feminism, when this is something that was happening centuries ago by women who are closer to the source material than we are. So I think it's not unreasonable to say that, you know, humans have always been human. Like, you'll find pottery or like remnants of masonry with like dicks carved into them. Like, humans find the same things funny over the centuries, and I think that's beautiful and silly and so weird. And like, we have the same sort of emotional depth basically that we have had since like written history started. So I think that's really cool that you can, in a way, reach through history and through these stories have things that are still relevant to us today in terms of themes, in terms of emotions, in terms of how we interact with each other. I think that's just great. And I absolutely think that like there are so many things, like we need to watch that movie, we need to play that game. I can't wait to play Hades 2. Like, good job. Good picks. And I just want to say that like there are so many things in Greek mythology we haven't talked about. I feel like we could do another episode on Greek mythology at some point later in time if we wanted to. Like, we
I
could come back
already
to this.
know what my topic would be if we did this a second time.
Oh yeah?
Oh, I would love to go through Zeus's life and just like
Oh.
a fucking timeline of all of the times that he just every time Zeus was wrong,
Oh my god, it would be a very interesting,
aka a timeline of his life.
yeah, very interesting, very in-depth timeline, I think, because there were lots of times he was wrong. From my very long and non-exhaustive list of topics, Celine has chosen Animal Crossing as our next topic. So that'll be very exciting, because you haven't played the most recent. Have you played any of them?
I've never played a single Animal Crossing game.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
So thank you everyone. If you are still here at the outro, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Hope that you enjoyed our little, is it foray?
Yeah, foray. Mm-hmm.
Into Greek mythology and what it is about the topic that we find interesting. If you would like, and you're listening to this on a platform that allows you to communicate with us in some way, tell us what your favorite part of Greek mythology is. We would love to hear what it is about Greek mythology that everyone finds fascinating, because there's so many different parts of it that, you know, something somewhere calls to someone, and we would love to hear what that was for you.
Yeah, we'd love to do a mailbag section.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Celine Whitetail.
You can follow me on Twitter too. I'm at Gull the Cactus. Same username on Twitch and Reddit and Scriptbin and YouTube.
Same for me. You can follow me or find me on pretty much every form of social media or content creation at this point. On Twitter, on Twitch, I stream every single day, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. EST. Usually stream video games, but every once in a while we'll do a just chatting stream where I'll react to some videos chosen by my chat. Right now we're playing through Octopath Traveler, which was requested through channel points by none other than Gull herself. Having a good time with that. You can find me on YouTube as well. I have a main VOD cut down channel, a regular full VOD channel, and an ASMR channel. You can find me on Patreon, also Celine Whitetail, as well as soon Fansly for a more non-Twitch friendly gameplay with some extra special surprises in there.
Thank you all for being here. Hope you have learned something. Hope you have gotten excited about something. And this could inspire you to do a little research and branch out in your everyday life and broaden your learning horizons. And also have fun, because that's the important part. But yeah, I have been Gull.
And I have been Celine.
And thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.